What to you is the distinction between breath release and breath support? Are they actually the same thing? And if they aren't, what might be the relationship between them? One of the things that makes this really tricky to talk about is that breath release and breath support, they're just concepts that singers have come up with over the years to describe what their experience of singing is and to try to figure out how to do it better. So these terms are actually really subjective. They're going to mean different things to different singers because each of us experiences breathing differently and uses different words to explain to ourselves what we're experiencing. I'm going to get around to sharing how I conceive of breath release and breath support, but first I would invite you to consider what these terms mean to you, because in the end all that matters is how can you come up with an idea of what breath release is or what breath support is that will help you to sing the way that you want to. When you think about breath release, what comes to mind for you? What role does breath release play in your singing? What about breath support? How do you conceive of breath support and how do you apply those ideas to your singing? When you contemplate the relationship between breath release and breath support, how does that work in your singing? While you're considering this, take some deep, mindful breaths and check in with your breathing anatomy. Notice what it's doing. What parts of your breathing anatomy are involved in breath release? What parts are involved in breath support? See if you can sense these things internally rather than figure out the mechanics of it conceptually. Everyone breathes differently, and each of us understands and experiences our own breathing anatomy differently. So what matters most is how you understand and experience your own breathing anatomy and how it likes to engage and respond when you're singing. Now I'll share my thoughts on breath release and tell you why I think it's important. When singing is going really well, people tend to describe the experience as being characterized by a continuous sense of flow, continuous sound supported by a continuous flow of breath. So everything we do with our breath will ideally support this sense of flow and continuity. Let's review how the mechanics of breathing can be described as a muscular process. Our breathing musculature is active when we inhale and passive when we exhale. We engage in a way that facilitates the intake of air, and then we release that engagement and the air flows out again. When we inhale, the diaphragm contracts, descends, and flattens out, creating a vacuum inside our lungs that draws air into our bodies. This process is assisted by the intercostals and various other muscles that help with inhalation. Once we're done inhaling, we allow those muscles to relax, and then exhalation can happen passively. Try that. Take a slow, full breath, and then stop inhaling, just let that go and allow the air to just flow right back out of you. You aren't using your breath to sing right now, so just take a moment to notice what that effortless passive release of breath can feel like, because you can enjoy that quality of effortless flow in your singing if you incorporate this coordination into what you do when you start your sound. This quality of breath release hopefully feels really good to you, and when combined with the intention to initiate sound, it's a really comfortable and efficient way to get your voice to go. If I take a full breath and release it like this while intending to start my sound, the passive release of my breath is everything that I need in order to initiate and begin sustaining the sound. By contrast, if you do something other than or in addition to releasing your breath in order to start the sound, you may be expending more effort than is desirable or necessary, as well as complicating what can be a very simple and organic process. If I start my sound with a deliberate push from my breath, I'm effectively second-guessing the degree of breath pressure that my cords are going to want in order to express what it is that I want to express. If I begin with a push, I'm going to have to continue pushing at the same rate in order to sustain the sound that I started with this pushing. And if I begin with a push, I'm going to have to begin by setting up something to push against. So instead of just releasing and going, I'm going to instead set up something to push against it and go, which is more effortful and harder to sustain, and it also leaves me with fewer options for things like dynamics and phrasing. I find that where initiating a phrase is concerned, my voice responds best when I take a well-coordinated inhalation and then passively release my breath into the phrase that I want to sing. This will actually be my best strategy both when the phrase is softer, more intimate, or when the phrase requires more energy. The intention behind the onset is what determines the quality and power of the onset. If I make my breath available and I have the expressive intention powering my voice, my voice will take the breath and elicit the degree of breath pressure that it needs. If I second guess it, I'm not going to have as much control over that. It follows that this is what I consider the relationship to be between breath release and breath support. Passive breath release is what you do to start the sound. Responsive breath support is what you do to sustain the sound. What I mean by responsive is that when you're singing and it becomes necessary to shore up your breath pressure, the muscles and tissues that are capable of affecting that increase in breath pressure gradually engage in response to the demands of what you are expressing. That, by the way, is the difference between support and pushing. Support is elegantly responsive. Pushing is like manually cranking up the intensity when you can tell that something inelegant is likely to happen if you don't. Here's an analogy, see if this works for you. When you go sailing or you fly a kite, you are harnessing the wind in a way that is similar to the way that your voice harnesses the flow of breath. The sail catches the wind, and then there's just this dance between the way that the wind is blowing and the way that you catch and ride it and let it take you where you want to go. Or your kite catches the wind, and then if you can skillfully maintain tension on the kite string, you can reel it out and let the kite go higher and farther away, control where it's going, and then carefully reel it in again when it's time to go home. That's what it feels like to me when my voice first harnesses breath release, and then gradually my support system can respond in a way that will keep my voice afloat. Here's another analogy that can help to explain why I feel that it's so important to create a breath support system that responds to the demands of singing, rather than setting up a system that deliberately pumps breath to your voice. Consider your mobile phone battery. Different apps on your phone will drain the battery at different rates. When you're filming video, that's going to drain your battery a lot faster, for example, than if you're sending text messages. The apps just take the battery power that they need. There is no app on your phone that's going to decide how much power to dish out to different apps, because the apps do a good enough job of that themselves. Your voice and what you want to express with it are what determine the quantity of airflow and the quality of breath pressure that you're going to need to sing each phrase that you perform. If you try to anticipate or second guess that, you aren't going to do nearly as good a job as your breathing system automatically will, provided that you have conditioned it well to respond to the demands of your singing. And be sure to initiate your phrases by releasing your breath rather than initiating phrases with a boost from your support system. Your expressive apparatus responds to the sounds that you are intending to make, and it knows how much breath and energy you're going to need in order to make them. If you take a well-coordinated inhalation and then release your breath in a way that is informed by your expressive intentions, you will enjoy smooth sailing. You are going to feel like you always have the wind at your back and enjoy a lot more control over what direction you want to go in and how fast or how slow you want to go there. If you would like to further explore the mechanics of breathing, do a deep dive into my How to Breathe Better for Singing playlist. You can also subscribe to this channel to support my work and be among the first to see new content when I post it.